Welcome back, family and friends, to the most entertaining install series on the entire planet. I see some familiar faces here this evening staring back at me blankly through the screen, probably because we've been on an outstanding journey to install all the rear end components on this short but sweet docu-series. So what better to suit being the GT86 BRZ FR-S RUCAs, aka the rear upper camber arms. Now, as you can see, spinning on the decks this evening is the main course. Let's just dive quickly into what type of spice Chef GK has added to this evening's meal. That delicious decadent menu can be seen on our product page, which is splayed out right in front of your very eyes. We update the menu as soon as Chef GK gets any and, well, basically all updates. So be sure to go ahead and check that out when you get a chance. We'll explain exactly what, when, and where to jam everything together shortly and in a bit. I'm getting motion sickness from all this spinning, so I think it's time we move on to the goddamn install. Now, the first and ultimately absolutely most important step, obnoxiously stick the GKTech sticker to any part of the vehicle you choose for the classy and timeless lower side windows where we went. Something that's not classy and timeless, however, is that overweight upper camber arm you're seeing weighing down the car on the screen. Let's liposuction this thing right on out of there. The first step is to throw up your ratchet, air and or electric powered if you can afford the luxury to own one, and a spanner on one side, and loosen and remove that nut and bolt. Head over to the adjacent bolt, get your super fancy tools back out, loosen and remove that as well from the back side of the arm that would now be floating. Head on over to the ball joint end and grab your ratchet and loosen and remove said nut and bolt, which is clamping the whole thing in place. After hitting your knuckles on every single other suspension component except for the nut, go ahead and remove the nut and bolt from Circlip a lot. Get your least favorite pry bar and leverage the arm off the knuckle up and out of the way. Once that's out of its seat, grab the ball joint like a stubborn carrot in the ground and yank that sucker out, wiggling the other side out as well. Now, we typically have a nice and easy bin shot here, but the arm is legally obese and broke the bin and DK's back pulling it out, so we had to use mean words and a forklift to get it into the bigger bin. Anywho, who needs to worry about the fatties when we've got our new lean, mean, fresh fighting machine ready to rock and roll? Let's dive into setting these guys up with the adjustment phase. Now, first things first, that little notch you see there on the top has been gifted to you by our engineers to adjust when these are on the car. When the adjuster sits with the thin side towards the inside of the arm and with the bearing butted up into its little nook as much as possible, that would be the most amount of inwards adjustment you can get, meaning mucho camber coming in at negative 10 millimeters from OEM, which may get you in the neighborhood of negative 2.7 degrees or more camber, depending on your setup. Now, with the cam in this position, the length can be adjusted between minimum length, which is the cam in its nook, right up to the OEM length if you were to pull that out the whole way, with the cam at this setting, as you can see on the very screen. Now, if you were to remove those bolts that hold the adjustment cam to the arm and spin that around with the thicker side snugged up to the inside edge, that should put you in exactly the OEM position, which if you're aiming for the OEM position, this is exactly where you would set the thickness of the nook. And as you guessed it, from here the cam can be adjusted between the OEM length, which is the chunky monkey side butted up to the nook, and the maximum length, which is the cam adjuster all the way outwards, getting you into the neighborhood and corrects your camber at about 2.7 degrees positive. Once you've determined exactly where you would want to sit on the scale of camber in your life, which in our case would be OEM, go ahead and wind the bolts through, tighten and torque them to the specs shown right here on the screen. Pro tip for all the dudes that like to go to extremes and who want to impress other dudes that have your ride running super low, like we all do. Before you install the shank, keep in mind this will put the shank at a mind-bending angle. If that's the case, you want to now rotate the circlip so that the ears face outward from the car. This will give you the maximum amount of clearance to ensure there's no interference whatsoever. Now that your circlip is clocked and out of the way, we calmly and carefully insert the shank facing the bottom of the arm. Then, on the top side, get that small bolt that accompanies the shank. Get your grandma's favorite ladle and start spooning that thread sealer on. Pour it on like that mustard and or a sauce for a cucumber or whatever weird vegan meal 86 owners enjoys in their spare time. Wind that sucker all the way down until it bottoms out, then go ahead and get your second favorite wrestling move with one arm, and then tighten and torque the bolt down to the specs shown on the screen, then wait until that torque wrench beeps and or the referee taps the arm out. As you can see from our super sick pan, your circlip is not clipping and locked and loaded to not interfere, and you're ready for the next super complicated stage. Now, I did mention the accessories were the underdog, the unassumed that makes sure this party is able to bolt to the subframe. In this case, you'll notice that there's one that is bigger than the others. And no, you were not supplied the incorrect parts. It just so happens that one side of the subframe needs this sort of sorcery. And they're so specific that you need to make sure that you're putting that big guy on the inside of the backside of your toothpick. Now the arms are mirrored, so on the other side you would be fitting it to the front side of your toothpick. We'll flip the screen in the video to give you a visual right now. Fit the rest of the normal and boring inserts as usual. Now we can head up to fitting these arms. Go ahead and wrestle that arm in, throwing a bolt on to each side. Get your hands into that super awkward half Star Trek dinosaur configuration, holding said nut, and wind that sucker down to the bolt you just unleashed into there. Engage your other hand into some sort of manipulation and thrust that nut up, through, and on. Leave them loose for now, making it easier to move the arm around. Go ahead and jam that shank into the knuckle, lining that divot up on the shank and the bolt you're about to throw on there. Throw in said bolt through the knuckle, wind the nut in from the other side, and leave that loose for now. Now, in the chance you get your second favorite electric torque wrench, if you've saved all your hard-earned pennies that is, throw that up into the deep dark space with a spanner on one side and this on the other, then tighten and torque to the specs shown right here on the screen. Naturally, head over to the other side and do the exact same thing, referencing the exact same torque spec. Head outwards to that bolt we did earlier, throw a spanner on one side and that uber fancy torque wrench on the other, tighten, then torque to the specs shown on the screen. Now just sit back, relax, crack open a cold sparkling water, because you're probably not 21, with these ultra deluxe pans that we're now showing you on the screen. Your arm has lost weight and is up to the task of making that rear end just a bit more exciting. Speaking of excitement, this is the crew that throw these videos together for you, possibly giving you your only source of laughter for this month, and you're welcome for that. If you have any other questions or you've somehow bolted your arm to your window wipers, please get in contact as we're more than happy to help you out. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and DK with one of the world's best how-to videos. We'll catch you on the flip side. Peace. If you have any other questions or somehow bolted the arm to your windshield wipers, Jesus Christ, John, that's fucking golden.